What if survival meant becoming a ghost in a land you once called home? What if every shadow, every rustle of leaves, whispered your name, taunting you as the hunter became the hunted? Welcome to the existence of a Boer guerrilla fighter, where loyalty is a loaded gun, and betrayal runs deeper than blood. Here, the line between friend and foe blurs until you can't tell if the glint in a stranger's eye is a spark of hope or a knife waiting to strike. Picture this, a world where the sun doesn't rise and set, but rather blazes and extinguishes like a dying star. You can hear the distant echoes of laughter turn to screams, the thunder of hooves drumming against the earth as men chase shadows and dreams alike. In this merciless arena, life isn't a story, it's a blood-soaked battlefield where the prize is survival, and every choice could be your last. What do you do when the enemy wears familiar faces, and the terrain morphs from sanctuary to snare? Betrayal is a currency here, and trust is a rare breed. Each day unfolds like an unwritten chapter of a dark comedy, where misfortune dances with destiny. Imagine being the punchline of a universe that finds humor in your plight, as you duck behind the very trees that once sheltered your ancestors. Is humor your only weapon? The bitter irony stings sharper than the knives you wield. You can't just shoot to kill, you must outthink, outmaneuver, and outlive. Every ambush is a game of chess, where a wrong move sends your pieces tumbling into oblivion. And yet, amidst the chaos, laughter bubbles up like an uninvited guest at a funeral. It's the only thing that keeps the madness at bay. But the stakes rise higher with every whispered rumor and each crack of a rifle in the distance. The smell of smoke mingles with the scent of betrayal, a heady concoction that leaves your heart racing. The world's not just watching, it's judging. Are you a martyr or a coward? A hero or a fool? Each decision is a crossroad, and with every choice, you tread on the razor's edge of fate. What secrets lie buried in the earth beneath your feet? What legends of valor and treachery bleed into each other like ink on parchment? As the sun dips below the horizon, shadows stretch long and dark, revealing glimpses of long-forgotten tales waiting to be told. In this theater of life and death, the past clings to you like a shroud, heavy and suffocating. So, what will you write with the ink of your blood? Will you forge a legacy that echoes through time, or will you fade into obscurity, another name lost to the winds of history? The choice is yours. But remember, once you step into the fray, there's no turning back. The only way out is through, and every heartbeat is a countdown to your next move. Welcome to the chaotic symphony of survival, where every note is a question and every silence, an answer waiting to be screamed. The night was thick with a silence so heavy that even the stars seemed to hold their breath. I stood there, heart racing, in the open, vast nothingness of the Karoo, feeling the biting chill of the wind wrap around my skin like a ghost's embrace. There, beneath the endless stretch of the cosmos, I could almost hear the whispered cries of my ancestors, echoing through the annals of time, each heartbeat a history, each pulse a memory. The air tasted of smoke and distant fires, and with it came the scent of fear, a fear born from the clash of cultures, from the struggle of survival, from the relentless quest for identity. I remember my father, his eyes wild with desperation, gripping the reins of our tired horse, shouting, "Go," as if the world would end if we lingered just a moment longer. We were fleeing, but where to? The horizon stretched before us, an endless sea of uncertainty. It was all so raw, so painfully real. I could see the sweat on his brow, the way it glistened under the pale moonlight, each droplet a testament to the burdens he carried, the weight of our people, the history of the Voortrekkers coursing through his veins like wildfire. Then there was Maria, my sister, just a child but with a spirit fierce enough to rival the storm that brewed in the distance. Her laughter rang out, pure and unfiltered, a haunting melody that danced through the shadows. "We'll find home," she promised, though even she could sense the tremor in her own voice. In that moment, as we raced across the barren landscape, her words fluttered like a moth drawn to a flame, beautiful yet fragile, alive yet teetering on the edge of oblivion. I remember the stories she told, of grandfathers who had once tamed the land, who had fought and bled for the right to call it their own. I could almost hear their voices in the rustle of the grass at our feet, prompting me to remember the battles fought not just against the indigenous tribes, not just against nature itself, but against the very essence of survival that bound us together. Those stories, woven into the fabric of our reality, were laced with the duality of hope and despair. They were the lifeblood of our existence, even when they seeped through the cracks of our shared history, tinged with the sorrow of lost lives and broken promises. The past surged forward like the tide, raw and uncontrollable, crashing against the fortress of my consciousness. I felt it in the way the earth trembled beneath our feet, in the shadows that danced in the periphery of my vision, reminding me that the ghosts of the past would never truly rest. The echoes of war, of betrayal, of courage, all clamored for attention, a cacophony of emotions that left my heart racing, my breath shallow, as if the very air I drew in was infused with the weight of lost souls. Why did they leave? Maria's voice, small and trembling, pierced the heavy silence. She was too young to grasp the complexities of our lineage, yet the question lingered in the air, heavy and suffocating. The Great Trek, the migration that carved our existence into the annals of history, was not one of mere movement, it was a desperate bid to escape the shackles placed upon us by the British Crown. It was a cry for autonomy, for the right to shape our destiny, even as it unraveled into chaos, a string of pearl-like dreams shattered by the harsh reality of the land that both offered and denied us life. I clenched my fists, feeling the earth beneath me pulse with the weight of my ancestors' struggles. They had fought against the storms of adversity, against the very essence of colonialism that sought to erase them from the pages of time. It was a fight that lived in every breath, in every heartbeat, and yet, here I stood, caught in the web of their legacy, staring out into the abyss of what was yet to come. What were we, then? A collection of bruised egos and tarnished dreams? A tapestry woven with threads of pride and sorrow? I felt the vibrant colors of our culture swirl around me, painting the night with hues of determination and resilience. But with every brushstroke came the darkness, the haunting specter of what was lost. Each family member, each compatriot, carried the scars of history etched deep into their souls, and it made my own heart ache, a visceral pain that clung to my thoughts like barbed wire. And yet, amidst the chaos, a flicker of hope ignited within me. I remembered the stories of triumph, of new beginnings forged in the fires of adversity. I remembered my ancestors' relentless spirit, their courage to stand firm against the tides of oppression, their unwavering belief that they could carve out a space for themselves in a world that seemed intent on erasing them. I remembered the way the sun broke through the dark clouds, how it painted the earth in gold, as if to say that even in the darkest of times, beauty could emerge. But as I looked back at Maria, her eye searching mine for comfort, I felt the depth of my own doubts. Would we ever truly escape the ghosts that haunted our lineage? Would we find peace in a land that had seen so much bloodshed, so much heartache? The questions loomed over us, casting shadows that stretched far into the unknown. The night wore on, heavy with unspoken fears and untold dreams. The world around us was still, a deceptive calm that held our fates in its grasp. I could feel it, the inevitability of the storm gathering on the horizon, ready to unleash its fury upon us. And in that moment, I understood that our story was far from over, it was a continuous loop of conflict and resolution, a relentless push and pull between our past and the uncertain future that awaited us. As we pressed on, the shadows closed in around us, whispering promises and threats in equal measure. The rhythm of our journey echoed in the silence, a haunting lullaby that stirred something primal within me. I knew that whatever lay ahead, we would face it together, siblings bound not by blood alone but by the very essence of what it meant to be Boer, to stand against the tide of history and carve our place within it. And so, we ran into the darkness, hearts pounding, breaths ragged, fueled by the echoes of our past, each step a defiance, each moment a testament to our survival. What awaited us was uncertain, but deep down, we were a part of something ancient, something fierce and unyielding. The night held its breath, and I knew the dawn would come, whether in light or in shadow, we would emerge anew, as we always had, into the world ready to confront whatever awaited. The wind howled like a banshee, slashing through the empty plains, carrying whispers of lost hopes and unfulfilled dreams. It was the moment of reckoning, the night that would mark them. Each crack of thunder echoed the heartbeat of history, each flash of lightning illuminating the raw faces of the weary souls bracing for the storm. I stood among them, heart pounding, the bitter taste of fear sharp on my tongue. It was a night that promised everything and nothing all at once, a night that felt alive with the weight of 1,000 destinies. Are we lost? Miriam's voice cut through the cacophony, quivering, desperate. Her eyes, wide and dark, glistened like wet stones beneath the stormy sky. She was a fire, fierce yet fragile, a beacon flickering against the encroaching dark. I could see the shadows of doubt creeping into her heart, wrapping her in a cloak of uncertainty. Each question she asked echoed in the depths of my own fears, doubts about our purpose, about our right to seek freedom on this untamed land. Lost? I snapped, a little too sharply, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. No. We're not lost. We're just wandering. The truth hung thick between us, unspoken yet palpable. I knew the journey was about so much more than the miles traveled. It was a question of identity, of reclamation. Beneath the fierce resolve, I, too, was searching for a reflection in the chaos, something to tether me to a sense of self. The images of the past invaded my mind like shadows at dusk. I remembered the city, the suffocating familiarity of its streets, the way they had whispered promises of comfort but delivered only chains. Each brick, each corner, held memories of a life I no longer recognized. The city had been a cage, its inhabitants puppets, their strings pulled by the whims of rulers who had no idea of the fire simmering within us, the unyielding need for autonomy. Ahead, I saw Jacob, his face a mask of determination etched against the night. He carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, a burden he wore with pride yet a burden nonetheless. The way he gritted his teeth suggested a storm brewed within, a tempest of rage and hope clashing violently. I could only imagine the ghosts that haunted him, the memories of family left behind, lovers abandoned, dreams sacrificed on the altar of duty. Keep moving, he commanded, voice steady, but his hands trembled. Each step forward was a war against the past, a battle for identity. I wanted to reach out, to pull him into the warmth of our shared struggle, but the distance between us felt insurmountable. The forces of our collective grief and hope twisted like the winds, pulling us closer yet pushing us apart. Thunder rumbled again, a warning, a prophecy. The storm matched the turmoil inside us, chaotic and unpredictable. I caught Miriam's gaze, and the silence between us crackled with unspoken fears. "What if we're chasing a dream that doesn't exist?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the roar. "What if we fail?" In that moment, I wanted to shield her from the truth, to wrap her in the flimsy fabric of hope. "What if we don't?" I replied, the words tasting like a prayer, heavy with the weight of possibility. There was something in her eyes, a flicker of defiance, a spark that dared to challenge despair. The skies opened, and rain fell, drenching us to the bone. It felt like cleansing, like a baptism of sorts. Each drop was a memory, a wound, a blessing. I closed my eyes, letting the rain wash over me, feeling the weight of the world lift just a little. The past could not drown me if I learned to dance in the storm. Then came the sound, an unmistakable crack, a shattering of silence. We turned to see them, shadows moving through the rain-soaked darkness, figures that emerged from the depths of despair. The enemy, the ones who had kept us bound. They wore masks of authority, their intentions cloaked in righteousness. I felt a pulse in my veins, a sharp electric surge of adrenaline. This was our moment, a collision of lives where dreams would either shatter or take flight. "Run!" Jacob's voice broke through the haze, and like a match struck against the night, we surged forward. The storm roared in agreement, a cacophony of chaos enveloping us. I could hear the thundering footsteps behind, feel the hot breath of pursuit. Fear tangled with the fierce joy of escape, and with every stride, I left pieces of my old self behind. We dashed through the mud, laughter bursting forth, wild and unrestrained. In that fleeting moment, we were not just rebels seeking a new home, we were warriors, reclaiming our right to be. Each heartbeat echoed in the rhythm of our flight, a symphony composed of longing and defiance. Then, as we stumbled upon a precipice, the ground beneath us gave way. I fell, arms flailing, mirroring the tumult inside. I landed hard, breath knocked from my lungs. But when I looked up, there was no fear. There was only the vastness of the cosmos, a canvas teeming with stars, each one a flicker of possibility. Miriam and Jacob stood over me, silhouettes against the brilliance. Their expressions were a reflection of my own, fierce determination mingled with love and loyalty. "Are you ready?" Jacob whispered, and his voice was the anchor I needed, grounding me in the chaos. I nodded, tears mingling with the rain, blurring the lines between pain and joy. In that moment, as the storm raged, we stood as one against the tide. The path ahead was uncertain, but we were not just fleeing, we were forging our identities in the crucible of adversity. Each moment carved itself into our souls, shaping the fabric of who we were destined to become. The shadows of our past loomed large, but in the eye of the tempest, we found clarity. This was not just a trek across the land, it was a defining journey through the very essence of our beings. And so we ran, hearts pounding, spirits ignited, into a future that shimmered with the promise of autonomy. The storm would not break us, it would forge us anew. The night was thick with the smell of smoke and gunpowder, the air heavy with the weight of 1,000 unsaid words. I could hear the distant echo of horse hooves, the pounding of tribal drums that felt like the heartbeat of the land itself. It was the kind of silence that screams. I remember the moment too well, when the shadows shape-shifted into men, each face a mask of grit and determination, each heart pulsing with the fervor of a cause that seemed to echo through the ages. In the flickering glow of a dying fire, I saw Jan, his face illuminated like a ghost from another time. His blue eyes, once shimmering with youthful dreams, now hardened into steel. I remember him as a boy, his laughter a balm to our troubles. Now, as he gripped his rifle, the weight of expectation bore down on him like a mountain. Jan had become the embodiment of a revolution, yet within him stirred a conflict as wild as the winds that tore through the plains. "Do you hear that?" he whispered, barely audible over the crackle of the flames. There was a desperation in his voice that sent shivers down my spine. "It's the sound of history, calling our names." But whose history? That question danced around us like a ghost, unspeakable and haunting. And then there was Mara, standing apart, shadows draping her slight frame like a cloak of sorrow. She was the heart, the spirit of our people, yet in her eyes flickered a flame of rebellion. The night had taken her brother, and the fire that burned within her was fueled by grief. "What do they want from us?" she cried, the anguish lacing her voice with the sharpness of shattered glass. "They want our land, our blood. They want us to bow." Every word was a dagger, piercing the air, resonating in the hollow chambers of our frightened hearts. The Boer nationalism that had begun as a whisper among the fields was now swelling into a roar, a tempest that demanded to be heard. I could almost see the weight of ideology clinging to them, an ethereal shroud of dreams and nightmares, heritage and blood. As Mara faced Jan, I felt the tension crackle like electricity. Their gazes locked, and for a moment, the world around us faded. It was as if time had stopped, a moment suspended between what was and what could be. "We are more than farmers," Jan said, his voice trembling on the precipice of desperation and conviction. "We are a people forged in the fires of struggle." Struggle? Or madness? Mara shot back, each word a thunderclap. "You think you can fight an empire? They will crush us. We are only shadows against their might." Her fear was palpable, wrapping around us, a cold hand gripping our throats. And there it was, the crux of it all. Fear and hope, love and loss, nationalism and personal identity. I felt each emotion swirl around us, a tempest of conflicting ideals. The moon cast its pale light over our faces, illuminating the raw, human struggle, the yearning for justice against an oppressive tide. I remember the stories my grandmother told me, tales of our ancestors who had walked this land with their heads held high, their spirits unbroken. Yet, I also remember the taste of bitterness when I learned that their triumph came at a price, a shadow stretching long over the fields of our forefathers. Would we too pay the price? Jan's jaw tightened, the muscles in his neck straining as he directed his gaze back to the flickering flames. "I am tired of being afraid." His voice shook with the weight of 1,000 burdens. "We are tired. Tired of waiting for change, tired of waiting for them to take everything we hold dear. It's time to rise." "Rise?" Mara's laugh was a bitter sound, like glass breaking against stone. "And what if we fall? What if this flame you wish to ignite consumes us all?" The fire crackled, and in its glow, I saw shadows dance, ghosts of the past mingling with the specters of our future. With every heartbeat, the distance between us narrowed, the urgency of our shared plight pulling us closer, yet deepening the chasm between our beliefs. In the silence that followed, the night seemed to hold its breath, waiting, as if the cosmos itself paused to observe our struggle. I felt the weight of history pressing down on our shoulders, the inexorable march of time that would remember us for our courage, or forget us for our cowardice. This was not merely a fight for survival, it was a struggle for identity, for the very essence of who we were. Each heart beat in time with the collective pulse of a people on the brink, and as the echoes of our ancestors whispered through the trees, their pain wrapped around us like a shroud. "Whether we rise or fall, we will be remembered," Jan replied, his voice steady, a beacon against the overwhelming tide of fear. "And what will they remember us for? For bending to the will of those who seek to erase us? Or for standing firm, for declaring our existence?" I could see the fire in his eyes, fierce, unyielding, an ember that refused to die. As the stars blinked above, I understood that we stood at a precipice, teetering between despair and defiance. What would we choose? What would history choose for us? And in that haunting moment, beneath the cold gaze of the cosmos, I realized the truth. Our souls were entwined with the fate of our land, our identities woven into the very fabric of history. We were not just fighting for land, we were fighting for a legacy, for the right to carve our names into the annals of time. As the wind howled through the night, I felt the weight of destiny resting upon us, a tension so raw that it could slice through bone. There was no easy path ahead, only the knowledge that the choices we made in the darkness would echo into eternity, and the struggle was just beginning. The sun hung low over the parched earth, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch into eternity. I could hear the distant rumble of hooves, a heartbeat of impending doom echoing through the air. The smell, burning gunpowder mingled with the acrid tang of fear, wrapped around me like a shroud. My heart raced, pounding against my ribs, each thud a reminder that this was not just history, it was life and death, a raw, visceral struggle for survival. In the thick of the chaos, I saw her, Eliza, her face streaked with soot and resolve. She clutched a tattered flag, its colors faded but still alive with meaning. "We cannot let them take our land," she shouted, her voice a fierce wind against the storm of conflict. I remember her eyes, fierce and wild, yet haunted by shadows of memories that danced just out of reach. She was not merely a symbol, she was flesh and blood, a woman forged in the crucible of war. And there, David, my brother, caught in the tumult. His hands trembled over the rifle, a weapon transformed into a grotesque extension of his will. "What have we become?" he murmured, the words barely escaping his lips, laden with despair. I felt it too, the weight of our choices pressing down like a mountain, crushing our souls under its relentless mass. In that moment of uncertainty, the line between right and wrong blurred into a tumultuous dance of survival. Gunfire crackled in the distance, each shot a heartbeat in the symphony of grief and valor. The Boer Wars had begun, a clash born from dreams of autonomy and the nightmare of oppression. It was more than land, it was lineage, a history soaked in blood and betrayal, stretching through the ages like an unending desert. I remember the night before the battle, the stars flickering like distant spirits, mocking us as we sat around the fire, our faces illuminated by the flames. Eliza shared tales of our ancestors, warriors and dreamers who had walked these lands before us. "They fought for freedom, just as we must," she declared, her voice echoing against the backdrop of the cosmos. But I could see the doubt flicker across David's face, a dark cloud hovering just beyond the reach of our flickering hope. "What if freedom is just a mirage?" he asked, a question that struck like a dagger, twisting in the heart of our shared resolve. The morning brought the stench of smoke and the cries of the wounded, a chorus of anguish that resonated deep within my bones. I stood beside Eliza, both of us caught in a dance of defiance and despair. The clash of metal rang in my ears, a cacophony drowning out the very essence of who we were. Men, once mere silhouettes in the distance, became monstrous figures, each grappling with their own demons. "Keep moving!" Eliza shouted, her voice slicing through the fog of terror. I watched her, fierce and unyielding, as she charged ahead, a beacon in the maelstrom. But I wanted to pull her back, to shield her from the brutality that lay ahead. "You don't have to do this," I cried, but my words were lost in the chaos. It was too late, her heart, fueled by an insatiable fire, urged her forward. In that moment, time stretched like a taut wire, a fragile thread connecting dreams to nightmares. I glanced at David, who was slipping away, the light in his eyes dimming with each brutal encounter. "We're fighting for our lives, for our future," I pleaded, but he merely shook his head, the weight of his decisions crushing down like an anvil. "Is this the future we want?" he whispered, and I felt the abyss of despair yawning open beneath us. The battle raged on, a relentless tide of violence that surged and receded like the ocean. I remember the screams, oh, the screams, echoing through the hills, ghosts of men who had fought valiantly and fallen. Each sound pierced my heart, a reminder of the lives extinguished by greed and ambition. I wanted to scream alongside them, but my voice was lost in the din. As the dust settled and silence fell, I found myself alone, surrounded by the remnants of our struggle. Eliza, once so resolute, lay wounded on the ground, her breath shallow, her spirit flickering like a candle in the wind. "We fought for our dreams, didn't we?" she gasped, her eyes pleading for reassurance. I knelt beside her, the world spinning around us, and whispered, "Yes, but at what cost?" David stood nearby, his face a mask of anguish, grappling with the weight of choices made in the heat of battle. "What have we done?" he murmured, his voice cracking like a fragile branch underfoot. The ghosts of our past flickered around us, memories dancing like shadows in the twilight of our fight. As darkness enveloped the land, I felt a cold chill creeping into my bones, an omen of the heartache yet to come. The Anglo-Boer Wars were not merely a conflict, they were a crucible, a test of our humanity, our resilience, our very souls. Each heartbeat echoed with the promise of more battles to come, more lives to be lost and won, as we stood on the precipice of history, a moment frozen in time, yet alive with the pulse of eternity. Time slipped through my fingers like sand, and I was left with Eliza's fading breath, David's haunted gaze, and the haunting realization that the conflict was far from over. The shadows loomed large, stretching towards the horizon, whispering of a future marked by both devastation and hope. The air crackled with the tension of what lay ahead, each heartbeat pushing us toward an uncertain climax, a confrontation with our own demons, our futures, and the ghosts of our choices. A muted thud breaks the stillness of the night, the sound echoing off skeletal trees, sending a shiver down my spine. I can't see the enemy, but I know they're out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. Fear grips my heart like a vice, squeezing tighter with every fleeting second. I glance at Sam, his eyes wide, reflecting the pale moonlight, filled with uncertainty and raw dread. "We're not soldiers, we're just two ordinary souls caught in a nightmarish tableau, fighting for survival in a world that has turned savage." I remember the old saying, "The best defense is a good offense." But here, in this moment, standing at the edge of what feels like oblivion, I wonder if there's any defense at all. The crack of a twig snaps my thoughts back into reality. We freeze, hearts pounding in synchrony, breath hitching in our throats. My fingers tremble, gripping the makeshift weapon, a crooked branch, splintered and rough. It's all I have to protect myself, a fragile token against the chaos that looms just beyond the pale of the trees. "Do you think they'll come for us?" Sam whispers, his voice a quivering thread woven with fear. I want to lie. I want to tell him it's going to be okay. I want to say, let's just wait it out. But the truth lingers in the air like smoke, thick, suffocating, inescapable. "I don't know," I finally manage, my voice barely a whisper, the admission tasting bitter on my tongue. The silence that follows is suffocating, a palpable weight pressing down on us. It's the kind of silence that tells you the world has forgotten how to breathe. I remember the first time I saw a soldier, his face painted with mud and grit, eyes wide and wild with adrenaline. He was a stranger then, embodying a life I never thought I'd grasp, a life filled with heroics and honor. Now, I recall that moment with painful clarity, a grim reminder of the cost of war, of intent and strategy, of the price people pay for freedom. I had romanticized it then, unaware of the visceral reality of violence, the flesh and blood of conflict staining the ideals I once believed in. The air feels electric, dragging me back to Sam, whose gaze darts around like a trapped animal, searching for an escape that may not exist. "We need to move," he urges suddenly, his voice rising with urgency. But where? The night has compressed around us, an unforgiving void. I can almost hear the heartbeat of the earth, pulsing in time with my own, a reminder that life exists even here, in this desolate place. Wait! I hiss, a sudden panic rising in my chest. What if they see us? The thought sends shivers cascading down my spine, a cold wave washing over me. But there's no time to dwell, the decision must be made, and fast. Every second we linger makes us a target, he insists, determination flaring in his eyes. I can't help but admire that fire, even as it terrifies me. It's brave, perhaps too brave, and I want to cling to that courage, even as my own flickers like an unsteady flame. I remember my father's words, the hardest battles are fought not on the fields, but in the heart. How true it is. Fear can be a cage, but so can hope. With a reluctant nod, we slip into the night, the world around us shrinking down to our frantic breaths and the rustle of leaves beneath our feet. We move like shadows, each footfall deliberate, each heartbeat a drum signaling our resilience. As we traverse the twisted paths of our ignorance, I can't shake the feeling that we are not just trying to survive, we are reclaiming something precious, something that has been stolen from us. And then, silence. A stillness so profound it vibrates in my bones. I can see the outline of a building ahead, broken and crumbling, a remnant of a time long forgotten. What if they're in there? Sam whispers, leaning closer, his breath hot against my ear, a ghostly promise of safety wrapped in dread. We have to check, I reply, but even as I say it, I feel the weight of my own words crushing me. The ambiguity of safety hangs in the air, and I realize we're not just walking into a structure, we're stepping into the abyss, into a confrontation with the specters of our past. The walls tell stories, secrets, and pain. Inside, the scent of mildew and decay assaults us, a reminder of everything we left behind. I can't help but reflect on the fragility of life, on how quickly everything can shift from normalcy to chaos. It's a cruel joke played by fate, and I'm not laughing. A sudden scuffle breaks the quiet, a sound like glass shattering, slicing through the heavy air. My heart races as I turn, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Did you hear that? I breathe, but Sam is already moving, stepping cautiously toward the source of the noise. Fear licks at the edges of my mind, a savage reminder of what the night holds. Stay close, I hiss, urging him onward, my instincts roaring to life. But in the dark, every sound becomes a threat, every shadow a possibility for danger. As we inch further into the darkness, I can almost hear the whispers of those who came before us, those who fought and fell, who crumbled under the weight of their own choices. The walls seem to close in, secrets etched in the trembling silence, ghosts waiting to pounce. Do you think it's too late for us? Sam's voice is barely audible, laden with the weight of despair. I remember when we thought we were invincible, I reply, my mind flitting back to the dreams we once dared to dream, so naive, so innocent. But we're still here, I insist, my voice a lifeline, a tether to a reality we can't let go of. And in that moment, the shadows shift, pulling us deeper into a world painted with the brushstrokes of uncertainty and fright. The night is our witness, the stars our audience, and we are not merely players in this game of survival, we are its heartbeat, its pulse, surging forward, driven by the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, we can carve out a space of light in this darkness. The confrontation looms ahead, a specter of uncertainty, and I can almost taste the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. The strategies we've learned, the tactics we've honed, they all boil down to this moment. But as we step into the unknown, I realize that the most potent weapon we possess is not our weapons or our will, it's our very humanity, the flickering hope that guides us through this labyrinth of shadows. And as we stand on the precipice of what's to come, the very fabric of the night seems to hold its breath, waiting. Waiting for a spark, a decision, a moment that will ripple through the echoes of our existence. We're not just fighting for our lives, we're fighting for the right to dream, for the chance to forge a new path in this unforgiving world. The stakes are higher than we can fathom, but we stand, united, two hearts beating against the storm. A gunshot rings out, shattering the pre-dawn stillness like glass. I freeze. The sound ricochets through the chill air, a reminder that this moment, this fragile breath between darkness and the first light of day, is laced with danger. My heart pounds, an insistent drumbeat echoing the urgency that hangs heavy in the damp dawn. I remember the last time I felt this way, when the shadows of my past whispered promises of peace but delivered only chaos. In the crackling silence that follows, I glance at Malik, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and defiance. Solidarity etched in his furrowed brow, he clenches his fist around the rifle, knuckles white, as if willing it to transform into a shield against the world. I know he's thinking about his sister, lost in the fog of war, a ghost haunting every step he takes. "Stay close," I whisper, my voice barely above the rustling leaves. Each word is a prayer, a desperate plea for survival that feels like a betrayal of the very hope we cling to. We crouch low, the underbrush a tangle of thorns and whispers. The air thickens, heavy with the smell of earth and worry. I remember the nights when we would laugh, when the simplest joys felt like an eternity wrapped in warmth. Those moments are mere flickers now, drowned out by the weight of what we've sacrificed. I glance at Amina, her face a mask of determination, eyes shimmering like flint ready to strike. She has been our backbone, every decision a calculated risk, every breath a testament to resilience. But I see the tremor in her hands, the way she bites her lip, and my stomach twists. What price will we pay today? Abruptly, the world jolts back to life, a rustle, a voice, the unmistakable rhythm of boots on gravel. "They're coming," Amina hisses. My body responds before my mind can catch up. Adrenaline floods my veins, and I feel the pull of something primal, something ancient. We scramble into the undergrowth, hearts thundering in unison, a symphony of dread. I can hear the conversations, bitter laughter mixed with harsh commands, the language of men who have long forgotten their humanity. They are monsters in the shape of men, and we are but shadows in their path. In the stillness between breaths, I steal a glance at Amina. I remember when she first joined us, her spirit unyielding even as the world crumbled around her. "This isn't just a fight for survival," she had said, her voice a fierce whisper against the wind. "It's a fight for our souls." I had believed her then, clung to her words like a lifeline. But now, as the weight of our reality settles, I wonder what soul is left to fight for. What do we become when survival is the only goal? The voices draw closer, their laughter slicing through the air. I can't help but shudder. I remember the day Malik found that photograph, the one of his sister, her smile radiant, untouched by the horror that would soon claim her. "I'll get her back," he had vowed, his voice steady, filled with a fire that flickered with every encounter with death. But now, what does that fire mean when faced with the reality of our choices? I close my eyes, letting the memories wash over me like rain, each drop a reminder of what we're fighting for, but also of what we've lost. "Now!" Amina's voice cuts through the haze, we spring into action. A plan, fragile as the dawnlight, takes shape. The chaos of the world outside this moment fades, and all that exists is the thud of our hearts and the rush of blood in our ears. I can't help but think of the clocks ticking in the distance, the seconds slipping away like grains of sand. Time, our oldest enemy, our most precious ally, taunts us with its passing. Each step feels like a dance, a careful choreography of survival. Malik leads, his breath quickening, his resolve palpable. I steal another glance, every memory folding into a new layer of desperation. I remember the first time I held a gun, the cold metal heavy in my palms, the weight of its promise and its curse. On that day, I swore I would protect them at all costs. But now, that promise feels like a noose tightening around my neck. The clash of steel and flesh erupts, sudden, brutal. I am thrown into the fray, the world reduces to a blur of movement, adrenaline coursing through me. I feel the heat of the gunfire, the acrid smell of smoke and sweat. I see Amina spring forward, a lioness among wolves, her courage electrifying the air. In this chaos, I watch Malik. He hesitates, just for a moment, eyes searching for a ghost, a face that has never left him. A single gunshot rings out, echoing in my mind like a death knell. I scream his name, but the sound is swallowed by the chaos. Time freezes. The world blurs. I remember the weight of the earth beneath me, the fire in my chest, and the haunting silence of loss. In that moment, everything hangs in the balance, hope, fear, love, loss. What does it mean to fight when everything feels so ephemeral? Each heartbeat resonates, a reminder of life and death intertwined. And then it's over. The echoes fade, the dust settles. I look around, breathing heavily, scanning for signs of life among the bodies. I find Amina, fierce and unbroken, and I find Malik, shaken but alive. The relief washes over me, but even as we stand together, I feel the fissures forming, cracks in our souls that threaten to consume us. We did what we had to do, and yet, I wonder if we've lost more than we've fought for. I can feel the weight of the sun rising, and with it, the promise of another day steeped in uncertainty. The fight isn't over, it has only just begun. As we steal away into the shadows, I hold on to one thought: each step, each breath, is a defiance against the darkness. The air was electric, crackling with tension as I stood on the edge of the escarpment, the roar of the river below a chilling reminder of nature's relentless power. The sun dipped beneath the jagged peaks, casting long shadows that threatened to swallow everything in darkness. I felt it in my bones, the weight of 1,000 unsolved mysteries, the stories of pain and resilience etched into the very rock beneath my feet. This place, South Africa, held its breath, waiting for something to happen. I could see her, Nomsa, her silhouette framed against the fading light, the wind whipping through her hair like wild horses breaking free. She was strong, fierce, haunted. Her heart pulsed with the rhythm of the land, each beat echoing the ancestral calls of her forebears. But in that moment, she was wrestling demons of her own, churning memories that clawed at her insides, a father lost to the vastness of the Karoo, a mother's quiet despair, the weight of history wrapped around her like a shroud. I remember the first time I met her. She stood defiant, a warrior disguised in a woman's skin, eyes blazing with unyielding fire. I was drawn to her, like a moth to a flickering flame, knowing it would burn me but unable to resist the pull. She spoke of the land with reverence, as if every mountain had a heartbeat, every river a whispered secret. "This is our blood," she said, and I felt the truth of it, raw and visceral, a reminder that the terrain we walked was as much a part of us as our very souls. But the land wasn't just beautiful, it was cruel. The vastness of the Karoo stretched into infinity, a sea of dry grasses and sharp stones, where hope flickered like a mirage. And it was here, in the haunting quiet, that I met David, standing alone, a man burdened by his own history. He was a cartographer of the human heart, mapping out the fractures in his life with the precision of a seasoned explorer. A quiet man, with shadows in his eyes, he wrestled with the weight of his past decisions, haunted by the choices he wished he could erase. I remember the trembling in his voice as he spoke of his family's legacy, a legacy tied to the land, yet tainted by betrayal. His father had once stood at the forefront of a movement, a beacon of hope for a better tomorrow, but the earth's relentless grip had crushed that hope underfoot. It was as if the very soil had conspired against them, holding their dreams hostage, forcing them to fight against the terrain that cradled them. "How do we reclaim what was lost?" he would ask, his voice a whisper caught in the wind, and I could feel the despair pooling like rainwater in the crevices of his heart. The mountains loomed over us, silent witnesses to our struggles, their presence a reminder of the battles yet to be fought. I recall the night we climbed to the summit, the stars blazing overhead like a million eyes watching our every move. We were giants for a moment, standing on the precipice of our fears, daring to confront the ghosts that haunted us. The air was thin, each breath a labor, but we pressed on, fueled by the fire of our shared pain, our shared resolve. "Do you remember the first time you felt small?" Nomsa asked, her voice a soft echo against the vastness. I could see her searching the horizon, looking for something just beyond reach. "I do," I replied, my heart racing in sync with the pulsing stars. It was here, in this desolate beauty, where the land pushed me to my knees. The mountains around us seemed to nod in agreement, cradling our memories, our fears, our hopes, like a mother tucking in her children for the night. But the terrain was not just a reflection of our internal battles, it shaped our lives in ways we could never have imagined. The rivers carved their paths, relentless and unforgiving, just as our destinies twisted and turned through the valleys of our struggles. The earth bore witness to the laughter of children playing in the fields, but also to the tears of those who had lost everything. And as we stood there, breathing in the cool night air, we could feel the pulse of the land beneath us, a reminder that we were never truly alone. I remember the silence that followed, a heavy blanket that wrapped around us as we took in the enormity of our surroundings. It was then that the shadows began to stir, a subtle reminder that the past never truly dies. Whispers of lost souls echoed through the valleys, stories of love, loss, and betrayal hanging in the air like the scent of rain on dry earth. It was a haunting symphony, the terrain vibrating with the memories of those who had come before us, urging us to remember, to confront, to connect. As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, the world shifted. The terrain that had once felt so unforgiving now shimmered with possibility. But beneath that shimmering surface lay the undercurrent of unresolved conflict, an invitation to revisit the past. "We can't ignore what's been done," David said, his voice steady now. "The land remembers, and so must we." And in that moment, I understood, the impact of terrain was not just geographical, it was deeply personal, a reflection of our own struggles, our own joys, our own heartbreaks. I could feel a new energy surging through us, a collective understanding that the weight of the land was also a weight we could share, a burden that could lighten in the presence of solidarity. The geography of South Africa was more than just hills and valleys, it was alive, breathing, a keeper of secrets that bound us together, urging us to confront our histories. As we descended from the summit, the shadows began to stretch again, the echoes of the past weaving through our thoughts. The terrain shifted beneath us, a reminder that change was inevitable, yet growth was a choice. With every step, I felt the connection deepening, the stories intertwining, binding us to this land that had become our shared canvas of pain and hope. And as we walked, heartbeats synchronizing with the rhythm of the earth, I realized that we were part of something larger than ourselves. The impact of terrain was a tapestry of lives interwoven, each thread holding stories of struggle and triumph. The mountains stood resolute, the rivers flowed fiercely, while we were mere whispers in the grand narrative, yet we were determined to leave our mark. The cycle was endless, endings that bled into new beginnings, heartbreak into healing, shadows into light. And in this very moment, we were alive, caught in the beautiful chaos of the terrain that shaped us, beckoning us to feel, to remember, to rise. The clattering of hooves on cobblestone echoed like thunder in the suffocating air. Dust danced in the last rays of the sun, swirling around Anna as she stood, heart hammering, hands trembling, a rifle slung awkwardly over her shoulder. The world around her was ablaze with chaos, the cries of men and the sharp crack of gunfire sliced through her thoughts. Time blurred, mocking her as she struggled to ground herself in this nightmare. She had never wanted to be a soldier, yet here she was, teetering on the brink, caught between loyalty and fear, a woman in a war not meant for her kind. Her breath came in rapid bursts. I must keep them safe," she whispered to herself, choking on the words. "They depend on me." The voices of her brothers echoed in the distance, calling her name, but they felt like distant storms, too far away to rescue her from the turmoil. Behind her, the makeshift camp was a tapestry of despair, children wailing, mothers cradling them against their chests as if their bodies could shield them from the horror outside. Anna's heart twisted, a fierce storm of guilt and determination swelling within her. She was one of them, one of the women left behind to nurture, to fortify, to rise. But the shadows of war whispered that nurturing was no longer enough. Then there was Eliza, a woman torn between tradition and the ferocity of her own spirit. She stood at the water's edge, hands submerged in the cool liquid, fingers tracing ripples that distorted her reflection. What had she become? The girl who once dreamed of love letters and picnics under the trees was now a figure cloaked in rebellion. The sight of her husband's uniform, freshly pressed but stained with the dirt of battle, sent her heart spiraling into a chasm. Each time she laid eyes upon it, a piece of her shattered. Was he alive? Was he fighting for their home or simply fighting to survive? "I can't wait anymore," she said, her voice barely a whisper against the howling winds. "There's nothing left for me but this." She breathed deep, the earth beneath her feet a grounding force, yet it felt shaky, uncertain. The war had come to their doorstep, and Eliza found herself clutching a tattered banner, a symbol of her defiance, her own heartbeat synchronizing with the rhythm of revolution. In her mind, she was not just a woman, she was a warrior, even if the world around her refused to see it. And then, in the shadows of the twilight, there was Mary, the ghost of a mother's love wrapped in the fabric of loss. She moved among the tents like a spectre, eyes hollow, searching for the laughter of her children that had been silenced by the echoing gunfire. The war had taken her husband, a soldier-turned-memory, and now it threatened to erase her children as well. Each child's face was a haunting reminder, a reminder of what she had lost, of what she was fighting for. She could nearly hear their laughter, a distant melody that ignited a fire within her. But every time she reached for that memory, it slipped through her fingers like sand. Keep them alive, she murmured to herself, her voice a fragile thread in the chaos surrounding her. She carried the weight of their loss, a burden that felt heavier with each passing day. Yet, she pressed on, drawing strength from the pain. A mother's love, she had learned, was fierce and unyielding, a force that could rival the very tides of war. The air thickened with tension, and the stars blinked overhead, distant witnesses to the human struggle unfolding below. Each woman, Anna with her rifle, Eliza with her banner, Mary with her memories, was a thread in the tapestry of resistance, weaving a narrative that defied the war's chaos. They were not mere spectators, they were architects of their destiny, each heartbeat a revolution against the backdrop of despair. "Fight, fight, fight," whispered the winds, echoing the call to arms. The battle was not solely fought on the fields, it surged through the very veins of these women. Anna felt the pulse of history in her blood, a call to rise. She could no longer be a silent witness to her brother's struggles. "I am here," she shouted into the night, a primal scream that pierced the darkness. Eliza, holding her banner high, felt the fiery surge of courage coursing through her veins. "We will not be silenced." The words erupted from her chest, igniting the fire in the hearts of those around her. The shadows of doubt dissipated, replaced by an undeniable strength that surged through the air like crackling electricity. And Mary, amidst the echoes of her children's laughter, found her voice too. "We will remember," she cried, a promise entwined with grief. The stars above twinkled brighter, as if acknowledging the weight of their words, bearing witness to the unwavering spirit of women who refused to be merely victims of circumstance. The camp transformed, the air crackling with determination. Women began to rise, to take their places on the front lines, not behind their men, but beside them. They became the lifeblood of resistance, the fierce guardians of their families and their nation. The war was no longer a distant storm, it was here, alive within them, igniting an unquenchable fire. And as dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of red and gold, Anna, Eliza, and Mary stood shoulder to shoulder, three women entwined in a tapestry of hope and defiance. Each pulse of their hearts resonated with the unyielding strength of their resolve. They were mothers, sisters, warriors, and they would not be forgotten. They were the voices rising above the chaos, a symphony of resilience echoing into the dawn. The war raged on, but in that moment, they were invincible. The horizon stretched before them, fraught with uncertainty yet shimmering with possibility. Time itself bent to their will, and the path ahead shimmered with the indomitable spirit of women who had learned to fight, not just for survival but for their very souls. The clock ticked on, each moment suffused with tension, every heartbeat a reminder of the battle waging on both inside and out. The story was far from over, it was only the beginning. The struggle, the heartache, the rebellion, it all wove together, creating a tapestry that told of women who would not bow, who would stand tall in the face of adversity, crafting their legacy among the ashes of war. The air was thick, a weight pressing down on the chest, a choking reminder of what was lost and what lay ahead. The sun dipped low, its golden rays slicing through the trees, casting long shadows that danced like specters across the forest floor. Rachel crouched low behind a gnarled oak, the bark rough against her trembling hands, her heart thundering a warning. She felt the pulse of the earth beneath her, a rhythmic drumbeat echoing a warning that sent chills skittering up her spine. The world outside was silent, but inside her, chaos reigned. "I remember the sound of gunfire," she whispered, her breath hitching, the memories flooding back against her will. "I remember the screams, the cries for help, so raw, so real." Her mind flickered to David, the boy with laughter as bright as the summer sun, now lost to the shadows. The fear of failure gnawed at her insides like a ravenous beast. They needed supplies, medicine, food, anything to keep them alive in this unforgiving wasteland they once called home. But with every passing moment, their chances slipped further away, like grains of sand through her fingers. Across the clearing, Dimitri watched her, a storm brewing behind his steely gaze. He clutched a tattered map, creased and stained from countless hands, its edges worn like their spirits. "We can't afford to be careless, Rachel," he said, his voice a low growl, both a warning and a plea. "Every minute counts. If we're caught," the unspoken words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their reality. He could feel the ghost of his brother beside him, the laughter they shared a mere echo, a distant memory now overshadowed by the shadows of war. "I know," Rachel murmured, but the words felt hollow, as if the very air laughed at their desperation. They were two mismatched souls, driven by a single, burning desire for survival. Dimitri, the stoic protector with a heart fractured by loss, Rachel, the fiery spirit, a beacon of hope flickering against an encroaching darkness. The stench of smoke wafted through the trees, a cruel reminder of what they were up against. The enemy was ruthless, a machine of destruction that knew no mercy, and yet, here they were, small, defiant against the tide of despair. They had no resources, no army, only scraps of determination and a few stolen moments of joy that felt like a cruel joke on the backdrop of their bleak existence. "I remember the nights," Dimitri said, his gaze piercing through the dimming light as if reaching for something beyond. "Sitting by the fire, sharing dreams of a future we thought we could have." His voice cracked, the memories threatening to drown him. "Now we're reduced to scavenging, to becoming ghosts of ourselves. What happened to that future?" Rachel looked away, unable to bear the weight of his longing. "We're still here," she replied, though doubt laced her words, twisting them like a knife. "We fight. We adapt. We survive." Yet, how do you survive when every breath feels borrowed, a debt that loomed ominously over them? She felt the broken pieces of her heart stitching together, forced into a patchwork of resilience. Desperation clawed at her, reminding her of what was at stake. The echoes of the past haunted her, and each sound was a reminder of the lives they had lost, of the innocence that had slipped through their fingers. The crunch of leaves snapped her back to reality. Dimitri's body tensed, every muscle coiled like a spring, ready to launch them into the unknown. "They're coming," he hissed, eyes flickering toward the path they had thought was safe. She felt it then, the air grew electric, a palpable tension wrapping around them, a cocoon of fear and adrenaline. They were outnumbered. The supplies couldn't wait, yet to risk it all in the face of danger felt like tempting fate. "I remember," Rachel breathed, "the way the world felt before this." Before, she trailed off, the memories crashing over her like waves against jagged rocks. "Do you think we can ever go back?" "Back?" Dimitri echoed, holding her gaze as if it were a lifeline. "There is no back. Only forward. We forge a new path. Take what we need, however we can." The determination in his voice ignited something within her, a flicker of rebellion against the suffocating weight of hopelessness. The sounds grew louder, a cacophony of footsteps and hushed voices. Their pursuers were close. Rachel dug her nails into her palms, feeling the rush of blood beneath her skin, the urgency spiraling. "We have to move," she urged, her voice trembling. "We can't wait any longer." Dimitri nodded, his eyes steely but alive with fire. "Right behind you." They took off together, their hearts racing in a synchronized rhythm, a desperate beat against the backdrop of impending doom. The underbrush tangled around their feet, but they weaved through the trees as if they were born from this very chaos. Each twist and turn was a reminder of their fragile existence, a dance with death that they had no choice but to embrace. With every breath, Rachel felt the world slip away, the past, the pain, all the dreams that had turned into ashes. It was just them, and the looming shadow that threatened to consume them whole. They were the ghosts now, lurking in the forgotten corners of a war-torn land. Their laughter was stolen, their future written in blood and fear. Yet, in that fleeting moment, as hope flickered like a dying ember, she promised herself they wouldn't fade without a fight. And so they ran, not toward an ending, but a beginning cloaked in uncertainty, a fight for survival that raged on, intertwined with the haunting echoes of the lives they had lost and the fierce, unyielding will to reclaim what was theirs. The supplies awaited, a beacon of hope, and together they would challenge the darkness, drawing strength from the ghosts of their memories, unwilling to let the shadows swallow them whole. The thunder cracked overhead, a jagged knife slicing the sky, as rain poured in torrents upon the muddy streets of Pretoria. I stood there, soaked to the bone, heart hammering against my ribcage like a trapped bird desperate to escape. The air vibrated with a raw, electric tension that seemed to coil tighter with each drop. I remember the whispers, low and sinister, threading through the damp air like a phantom stalking the alleys. They said shadows had ears, and tonight, they were listening. Across the street, Helena crouched behind a crumbling wall, her eyes wide and wild, glinting with a ferocity only desperation can ignite. She was no ordinary woman, she was a ghost in the flesh, a soul caught in the crossfire of ambition and loyalty. The weight of her choices hung heavy on her shoulders, a cloak woven from secrets and blood. I could see the trembling of her hands as she clutched the parchment tightly. It was a map, a lifeline, a death sentence. This was our moment. This was her moment. "Do you hear them?" she whispered, voice barely more than a breath against the howling wind. I strained forward, listening. I remember the muffled footsteps approaching, the crunch of gravel under boot. Men in dark uniforms, faces obscured by the shadows, moving with the confidence of wolves hunting in the night. Every beat of my heart resonated in my ears, a countdown, a reminder of everything that was at stake. "Run," I urged, the word escaping me like a plea. "Run!" But my voice was swallowed by the storm, and I knew I was too late. She hesitated, fear etching lines across her face, and in that split second, I felt her resolve shatter like glass. I, too, was a flawed architect of deception, swept into a web of espionage that glimmered with both promise and peril. I had my reasons, my own demons to wrestle with, but standing there, watching Helena teeter on the brink, I realized I was the one sinking in the quicksand of my choices. With a shaky breath, she surged forward, a wild stallion breaking free from its tether, and I followed, urgency clawing at my throat. We darted into the maze of narrow alleys, the rain now a torrential curtain that blurred the boundaries of reality. Every footfall echoed, a drumbeat heralding our doom, but still, we pushed on, swallowed by shadows, our presence a mere flicker in the grand design of war. We reached a dead end, the walls towering and cold around us, like prison bars closing in. The air thickened with the scent of wet earth, and I felt a shiver creep down my spine. Were we the hunted, or had we become the hunters? Behind us, the heavy tread of boots drew closer, the sound suffocating, a reminder of the fate lurking just beyond our reach. But Helena had not come this far to succumb, and neither would I. "I can't," I stammered, caught in a cyclone of fear and adrenaline. "What if they catch us?" Her gaze pierced through the storm, unwavering. "Then we fight," she declared, a warrior's resolve igniting the spark in her eyes. "We've come too far to turn back now." But who were we fighting? The enemy? Or the ghosts of our own pasts that haunted our every step? The very air seemed to vibrate with unanswered questions, and in that moment, I felt time stretch, bending like a bowstring ready to snap. I saw fragments of our lives flashing before my eyes, laughter at clandestine meetings, shared dreams whispered under the cover of night, a promise of freedom, the taste of rebellion. It was intoxicating yet terrifying, a double-edged sword that could either liberate us or plunge us deeper into darkness. A sudden noise erupted behind us, a scuffle, a shout, and the world shattered like porcelain. I whirled around, adrenaline spiking, but it was only a stray dog, barking into the void, pushing us back toward our reality. Helena took my hand, her grip fierce and unyielding, as if she could anchor my spiraling thoughts. "Look," she shouted, pointing toward a narrow alleyway that seemed to beckon to us like a siren. It was a passage into the unknown, filled with both peril and promise. There, secrets lingered, murmuring like lost souls yearning to be found. The darkness swallowed us whole, the dampness wrapping around our limbs, an embrace both suffocating and liberating. Every step was a gamble, the stakes higher than life itself. We were players in a game where the rules were written in blood, and every heartbeat resonated with the pulse of war. Then he emerged, a figure cloaked in shadows, his face obscured, but I could feel the weight of his gaze. Anton, the spy master, the puppet master pulling the strings of a network that stretched across continents. He was the embodiment of the storm that raged outside, chaos incarnate, and in that instant, I was struck by an overwhelming sense of inevitability. "Helena," he hissed, a serpent's whisper that called around her name, "you shouldn't have come here." I felt her tension, a wild animal ready to bolt, yet there was something else, a flicker of recognition, a tether of hope. "I'm not afraid of you," she said defiantly, the fire in her voice illuminating the dark. "But fear is a beast that hides in the shadows, gnashing its teeth, waiting for the perfect moment to strike." I felt it crawl across my skin, a chilling reminder that we were tangled in a web far beyond our control. The storm raged on outside, but in this claustrophobic space, I could hear the beating of hearts, the mingling of breaths, the haunting melody of desperation. Time twisted, and I saw it clearly, the choices before us like twisted branches of a gnarled tree, each one leading us further into the unknown. Helena, Anton, and I were caught in a storm of our own making, and the only question was whether we would come out alive, or if the darkness would consume us whole. The rain fell harder, louder, echoing our uncertainty, reminding us that in a world of espionage, trust was the rarest currency of all. And as I stood there, trapped between the past and the future, fate pulsing in the air like the steady rhythm of a drum, I knew this was just the beginning. The crack of gunfire split the stillness of a starlit night, a vicious reminder that peace was but a ghost, haunting the creased faces of men who had once dared to dream. I remember the taste of earth and blood mingling in the air, thick and suffocating, as I crouched behind a gnarled tree, feeling the bark bite into my skin. The shadows danced, whispering stories of vengeance and survival. The moon, a pale observer, cast its light on the grim tableau unfolding, a battle not just of bullets, but of souls. My heart thundered in my chest, a prisoner of the chaos around me. In the distance, I saw him, the General Christian de Wet, a man carved from the very granite of the Karoo, standing tall amidst the turmoil. His blue eyes sparkled with defiance, a fire ignited by the oppressive weight of war that threatened to consume him. He was not just a leader, he was a man torn between duty and despair, a father haunted by the spectre of his children, who had taken root in a land stained by conflict. Each decision was a dagger twisted in his gut, each loss a wound that would never heal. I remember the weight of his burden, the moments when he would sit alone, staring into the abyss of night, wrestling with the ghosts of comrades fallen. The silence would drape itself over him, thick and suffocating, as if the universe held its breath, waiting for him to either surrender or rise again. It was in these moments of quiet turmoil that the real battle raged, the battle within. His mind raced with questions that had no answers, but he stood resolute, embracing the darkness that enveloped him, wearing it like a cloak. Then there was the indomitable Coups de la Rey, his laughter echoing like thunder through the valleys, even in the face of death. I watched him lead his men with fierce loyalty, a lion among sheep. Yet beneath that bravado lay a vulnerability that gnawed at his heart, an ache for the family he left behind, for the laughter of children that seemed to slip through his fingers like grains of sand. I remember the way his hands trembled when he thought no one was watching, the way his eyes would glisten with unshed tears, reflecting the stark reality of their struggle. The weight of responsibility crushed him, even as he inspired those around him to hold fast, to fight like there was no tomorrow. The battlefield was a cruel mistress, slinging arrows of despair coated in hope and human folly. Each soldier was a flicker of flame in a sea of darkness, brave, yet terrified. I remember feeling the adrenaline coursing through my veins, the thrill of skirmishes and the deafening silence that followed, a silence too heavy with the memories of fallen brothers. In the heart of war, camaraderie was both a balm and a curse, binding them together with invisible threads of shared agony. De Wet's eyes locked onto mine one fateful night, a moment suspended in time, a shared understanding of the abyss we stared into. "What do we fight for?" he whispered, the weight of his words heavy as lead. The moon bore witness to our exchange, the silence around us thick with unspoken truths. I could feel his pain, the pain of countless souls who clung to the flickering flame of freedom, the dread of losing everything they held dear. And then came the inevitable clash, a cacophony of fury and fear, a symphony of chaos as we charged into the fray. The scent of gunpowder filled my nostrils, sharp and bitter, as the world around me blurred into a dizzying whirl of desperate faces and frantic cries. My heart raced, pulse pounding like a war drum, each thud resounding with the knowledge that any moment could be my last. I remember the grit that mingled with my sweat, the taste of despair on my tongue as I fought not just for survival, but for the ghosts who had walked beside me. In the eye of the storm stood Coos, his laughter a haunting echo against the backdrop of death. He was a beacon, a paradox of joy amid despair. The fierce determination in his eyes was a lifeline, yet I saw the cracks beneath the surface, the fear of what lay ahead gnawing at his insides. I remember the moment he turned to me, a fleeting smile cracking through the weight of responsibility, and whispered, "It's not just for us, it's for them." It was a promise wrapped in desperation, binding us together in our shared fate. Then came the darkness, the kind that swallowed hope whole. The days blurred into nights, the stars above mere pinpricks of light against a canvas of despair. I could feel the weight of grief pressing down, a relentless tide that threatened to drown us in sorrow. I remember the hollow laughter of men who had lost everything, brothers, fathers, sons, what was left to lose? Each loss etched deeper scars, yet still, we rose, fueled by a fire that refused to be extinguished. The final stand was a crescendo of chaos, a dance with death that spun wildly out of control. I remember the moment, frozen in my mind, as if time itself held its breath. The air was thick with gunfire and the cries of the wounded, a symphony of pain and sacrifice. De Wet and Coos fought side by side, the weight of their destinies intertwined like vines clinging to the last breath of life. But it was in that moment of profound despair that I felt the flicker of hope, the understanding that their fight was more than flesh and blood, it was a battle for the very essence of who we were. This was not just war, it was a testament to resilience, to the human spirit that refused to crumble beneath the weight of oppression. As the dust settled and the echoes of battle faded, the skies began to weep, a gentle rain washing over the remnants of our broken reality. I stood there, caked in mud and blood, heart heavy with the weight of loss, yet understanding that this was not the end. The legends of De Wet and Coos would ripple through time like the stars overhead, their stories igniting the souls of those who continued the fight. The night echoed with the promise of resilience, of stories yet to be told. The air hung heavy, thick with an unnameable dread, like a storm poised to shatter the brittle dusk. I could feel it, a pulse thrumming between us, a silent scream suspended in the atmosphere. Around me, shadows loomed taller than men as the last remnants of daylight curled away, leaving us shrouded in darkness. And then, just like that, it happened. A scream tore through the silence, sharp enough to slice the night. I remember the sound. It was that of pure terror, raw and unfiltered. It belonged to Jenna, her voice laced with the kind of fear that seeps into your bones, paralyzing you with its icy grip. I turned, heart racing, to see her standing beneath the flickering fluorescent lights, eyes wide, pupils dilated, like a deer caught in the headlights of a freight train. Something was coming, and we all felt it, a palpable threat that made the ground beneath us tremble. "Don't!" I shouted, but the word barely escaped my lips before she bolted, scattering papers, memories, and our half-formed plans like autumn leaves in a gale. I watched her run, a frantic blur of movement, a heart beating wildly against the creeping shadow. I felt it too, the dread, the suffocating weight of uncertainty pressing down like a leaden blanket. What was out there, lurking? What had seeped into our fragile reality? As Jenna fled, I turned my gaze to Sam, who stood rooted beside me, fists clenched, jaw set in a grim line. He was the calm amidst the chaos, the sturdy oak in a forest of trembling saplings. But I knew him, I knew the lies he told himself. I remember the nights he spent tossing and turning, wrestling with ghosts from the inside, the darkness that clawed at his sanity. "We can't let her go alone," I hissed, urgency threading through my voice. His eyes met mine, and in them, I saw the flicker of doubt, the gnawing fear that had become our constant companion. "What if," he started, the question hanging heavy between us like a guillotine poised to fall. But there was no time for what ifs. I squeezed his arm, bracing myself against the storm that raged within us both. "We have to be brave. That's what they said, right? Be brave in the face of danger. But how do you summon courage when every instinct screams at you to run?" I watched Sam swallow hard, his resolve thickening like a fog. The fear was palpable, a living thing curling around us, whispering its vile promises. I felt it too, a tantalizing whisper that threatened to choke the last of our morale. A single thought loomed larger than the fear itself: what if we fail? What if we lose her? With a shared glance, we took off, racing into the enveloping dark, adrenaline sparking through our veins. Each step echoed louder than the last, a metronome ticking down to some inevitable end. And in that moment, I could feel the weight of our past pressing down, a collage of memories flashing before me. I remember the laughter that once filled these halls, the camaraderie forged in the fires of adversity. But those days felt like distant stars, flickering and fading in the vastness of our new reality. "Jenna!" I called, my voice cracking, each syllable a desperate plea thrown into the void. We rounded a corner, breathless, hearts hammering against ribcage like trapped birds, wings flailing against the bars of our fear. The echoes of our footsteps danced mockingly against the walls, taunting us with the knowledge that time was slipping away. "Where is she?" Sam's voice shook, a tremor betraying the steel facade he tried so hard to maintain. The darkness clung to him, wrapping around his shoulders like a shroud, relentless in its pursuit. I could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes, a question that hung unspoken between us. Were we too late? And then, just ahead, a flicker of movement. "Jenna!" She was crouched in the corner, eyes darting, breath hitching, caught in a web of her own making. "Help!" she rasped, a fragile sound that tore through the thick air like glass shattering. I reached for her, but the shadows twisted, grotesque figures emerging from the dark, stretching towards us with skeletal fingers. "Run!" I shouted, the urgency clawing at my throat. My heart raced, blood pumping furiously as I pulled Jenna to her feet. Fear shot through us in electric jolts, a current that threatened to sever the ties of reason. We were on the precipice, teetering between hope and despair, the abyss yawning wide beneath our feet. Sam gripped my arm, pulling us toward the flickering light of the exit, but I could feel the weight of dread gnawing at us. Each passing second felt eternal as the shadows danced closer, taunting us with their whispers, creeping into our minds, gnawing at our resolve. I remember thinking, will this be our end? In that haze of terror, I could almost hear the clock ticking, each second a drumbeat of impending doom. "Keep moving," Sam urged, his voice steady even as the walls threatened to close in. I could see the determination etched into his features, and for the briefest moment, it burned bright against the encroaching darkness. It reminded me of the resilience that flickered within us, the spark that refused to be extinguished even in the face of despair. Together, I whispered, the word a lifeline thrown into the tempest of our fears. We pressed on, hearts pounding in unison, a trio of souls defiant against the looming shadows. It was a fight, not just for our lives, but for the fragments of hope that remained buried beneath fear. As we burst through the door, the cold air hit us like a slap, a reminder that we were alive, breathing. But the night was still dark, and the shadows still lingered. I could feel the echoes of that moment etched in my mind, the fear that clawed at our hearts, but also the flicker of resilience that burned brighter, a reminder that even in the darkest of nights, we could find a way forward. And as we fled into the night, I knew this was only the beginning. The psychological toll was far from over. Fear lingered, but so did our resolve. We were bound together by the shadows we faced, and with each step, we forged ahead into the uncertainty, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. Because even in the depths of darkness, there is a flicker of light, a pulse of hope that refuses to die. The night was alive with a cacophony of chaos, the air thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder and fear. Shadows darted through the narrow alleyways of the crumbling city, each step heavy with the weight of unseen eyes. I remember the thud of a distant explosion, a shudder that reverberated through my chest, a heartbeat in the pulse of war. I stood alongside my comrades, the stark reality of our mission twisting like a knife in my gut. I remember whispers, Sergeant Lewis said, his voice a gravelly rasp, shadowed by the dim glow of a flickering street lamp. Whispers of families torn apart, of fathers who never returned. His haunted gaze caught mine, and I felt the gravity of his memories, the weight of his sorrow. In those moments, I saw his soul stripped bare, raw, and aching. By his side stood Corporal Sarah Mitchell, her face streaked with dirt and determination. I admired her strength, but her eyes were stormy waters, turbulent with the memories of lost friends and shattered dreams. She glanced at a flickering window above. "They're watching us, you know," she murmured. "The ghosts of all the choices we've made." Our hearts raced as we moved deeper into the darkness, every footstep a prayer, every breath laced with the taste of dread. We were not just soldiers, we were the weary weight of decisions made in the swift calculus of survival. Each of us harbored our demons: Lewis, haunted by the faces of the fallen; Sarah, clinging to the flicker of hope for normalcy in a world unraveled by insurgency. A sharp crack of gunfire shattered the night, and instinct kicked in. Our bodies reacted before our minds could catch up. We dove behind a concrete barrier, the sound echoing like a death knell. "Stay low! Move!" I shouted, adrenaline surging through my veins. The world around us turned chaotic, a whirlwind of shouts and explosions echoing through the streets. I remember the warmth of blood on my hands, fresh and visceral, when I pulled Lewis to safety. His leg was caught, and panic flickered in his eyes, wild and desperate. "I can't," he gasped, the words catching in his throat. I could feel his panic, an electric charge, sparking against the suffocating darkness. "Hold on!" I growled, adrenaline turning my voice into a weapon. With every ounce of strength, I heaved him free, the weight of our bond anchoring us in that moment. The world around us fell away, the chaos, the explosions, the screams, but in that heartbeat, it was just us. "I won't leave you, not here, not now." And then Sarah was there, the flicker of her resolve lighting the way. "We've got to take cover," she cried, urgency propelling her forward. Her bravery was intoxicating, infectious, and I felt the flicker of our shared resolve. We were not just fighting for our lives but for every fragmented dream crushed beneath the weight of war. As we stumbled into the shadows, the siren call of the city wove around us, a murmur of history and heartache. It whispered tales of those before us, of soldiers who fought and fell, of families torn apart by conflict. "We're not just soldiers," I heard myself saying, the words tumbling out unbidden. "We're the voice of those who can't fight back." And yet, in the depths of my heart, doubt crept in like a thief in the night. What did it mean to embody hope in a landscape soaked with despair? The insurgency was a specter, a ghost that refused to fade, haunting us with its relentless grip. Every operation, every tactical maneuver felt like grasping at shadows, ephemeral and elusive. But still, we pressed on. We became a collective heartbeat, a rhythm of survival in the face of overwhelming odds. When the dawn broke, it illuminated the debris of our choices, scattering light through the grime. I stared into the horizon, where the sun peeked over the ruins, a ghostly promise that perhaps life could flourish again. "Look at that," Sarah breathed, her voice tinged with awe, as if she could feel the faint whisper of hope blooming beneath the ash. "If we survive this, maybe we can rebuild." But the reality of our mission loomed, relentless and unyielding. Each day blurred into the next, a cycle of violence and loss. The insurgency was a dance of shadows, a constant threat lurking just out of sight. Tactical drills, counterinsurgency maneuvers, they were our lifeline, but they were also a bitter reminder of the lives we were entangled with, the souls we fought against. I remember the faces of civilians, their eyes wide with fear, their lives torn apart by the very conflict we were thrust into. Each encounter left a scar, a reminder that every strategy, every tactical decision had consequences. The line between right and wrong blurred until it was an indistinguishable haze. Then came the night when everything changed, a moment when time seemed to collapse around us. A sudden ambush, a surge of adrenaline, and chaos erupted, gunfire echoing like thunder, the world spinning out of control. In that storm, I lost sight of Lewis. The anguish clawed at my chest as I fought my way through smoke and fire, searching for his familiar face in a sea of chaos. "Lewis!" I screamed, my voice swallowed by the cacophony. But his face was gone, lost in the shadows. I felt Sarah's hand grip mine, a lifeline amidst the chaos. "We need to go," she shouted, her voice breaking through the din. But I couldn't move. I could only stand there, paralyzed by the fear of losing him. In that moment, I understood that war wasn't just about strategies and tactics, it was the agony of human connection, the raw, primal fear of loss. The weight of survival pressed down on us, more than the ammunition we carried, more than the scars etched on our skin. As dawn broke over the horizon, I stood there, drenched in the aftermath of the night, my heart heavy with the burden of what lay ahead. The ghosts of our decisions hung in the air, waiting patiently like shadows. I felt the world shifting beneath my feet, the pulse of life intertwining with the ache of loss. And as we moved forward, I knew this was not the end. It was merely a chapter, a fleeting moment in the tapestry of an unending struggle. Hope flickered in the distance, a fragile flame in the encroaching darkness, waiting for us to find our way back, to fight not just for survival, but for the heart and soul of what it meant to be human. A single shot rings out across the stillness of a late afternoon, slicing through the air like a knife through flesh. The sound reverberates off the distant hills, a haunting echo that leaves hearts pounding and minds racing. I remember the way the sunlight glinted off the barrel of the rifle, a moment frozen in time, as though the world had inhaled sharply, waiting for the inevitable exhale of chaos that would follow. Anna crouches behind a half-collapsed wall, her heart hammering like a war drum. She should be inside, tending to the fire, singing lullabies to her two small children who are fast asleep. But the air is thick with dread, and she can hear the distant rumble of hooves, the clinking of metal, the shouts of men who have forgotten their humanity in the name of conquest. Her hands tremble, gripping the rough surface of the stone, a lifeline tethering her to the fraying edge of reality. She thinks of Peter, her husband, lost somewhere in the chaos, a ghost roaming the fields where laughter once danced. Anna, she whispers to herself, stay quiet. Stay strong. But her body is betraying her. Each breath feels like a betrayal, too loud, too desperate. She remembers the day they moved into this farmhouse, the sun setting behind the hills, casting a golden hue on what felt like forever. Now that forever is a distant memory, buried beneath the weight of fear. Outside, the world is unraveling. A group of soldiers, dark shadows against the fading light, ride through the village, their faces twisted by purpose, eyes burning with something cruel. They are not men today, they are monsters, faceless and relentless. Each bootstep is a reminder of the fragility of her existence. How easily they could tear through it all, like paper, like dreams. And then there's Thabo, a boy on the cusp of manhood, his heart caught in the crossfire of loyalty and betrayal. He watches from behind a nearby tree, branches clawing at his skin, as the soldiers shout orders, their laughter ringing hollow in the air. You should join us, Thabo, one of them had sneered earlier that day, a smirk slicing his face in two. Or do you prefer to hide like a coward? The words cling to him, a noose tightening around his resolve as he grapples with the bitter taste of allegiance. He remembers his mother's voice, soft yet firm, as she taught him the importance of standing up, of fighting for what is right. But what is right when the world is painted in shades of grey? He feels the weight of his ancestors on his shoulders, their spirits whispering through the rustling leaves. Fight for your people, Thabo, they murmur, but his heart is a battlefield, torn between the call of duty and the instinct for survival. In that moment, Anna's children stir, a soft whimper breaking through the tension. A sound so innocent, so pure, yet it slices through her with the sharpness of a blade. She can't let them see fear, she can't let them know the war that rages just outside their door. Hush now, my darlings, she whispers, her voice trembling like a candle flame in the wind. But the truth is, she feels like a paper doll, thin and fragile, caught in an unforgiving tempest. A shot rings out again, and Thabo flinches, his mind racing. He knows the sound all too well, knows that it could mean the end for someone. For him. For Anna. The thought pierces him, sending chills down his spine. He inches closer to the chaos, drawn by a force he cannot comprehend. Perhaps it is courage. Perhaps it is folly. Time stretches and bends, a cruel mockery of its own passage. The shadows grow longer, merging with the darkness that seeps into the corners of the world. Anna's eyes dart, catching a glimpse of a soldier on horseback, his face obscured under a tattered hat, but the malice in his stance is unmistakable. She feels her heart plummet, a stone dropped into the depths of an endless well. Peter, she murmurs through cracked lips, each syllable a prayer hanging in the air. Her mind races back to the last embrace they shared, the warmth of his hands, the laughter that echoed like music in their little home. Please come back to us. And then she recalls the laughter of her children, the way it danced through the air like wildfire, igniting even the darkest corners of their lives. I remember, she whispers, the words tumbling out like autumn leaves. I remember when the world was whole. When love was a shield against the storm. But storms have a way of finding their way in. The door bursts open, and the cold air rushes in, bringing with it the scent of gunpowder and earth. A soldier steps inside, his eyes scanning the room, hollow voids that consume everything they touch. Anna's breath hitches, and she clutches her children closer, their small bodies trembling against her chest. Thabo watches in horror, his heart pounding like a drum. The soldier raises his weapon, and time freezes, suspended in the air like a fragile thread, ready to snap. The moment stretches, a taut bowstring ready to release its arrow. He feels the weight of the choice before him like a stone in his gut. Am I a coward? He whispers to the wind, the question hanging heavy in the air. But before he can move, a fire ignites within him. No longer a boy hiding, he is becoming something more. The spirit of his ancestors whispers louder, urging him forward, a fierce flame against the encroaching darkness. In those moments, life and death collide, a cacophony of voices screaming for freedom, for love, for life. Each heartbeat echoes with the struggle of existence, a fragile melody woven into the fabric of their chaotic world. The soldier's laughter rings out, cold, cruel, with a promise of violence in the air. But somewhere in the distance, a child's cry pierces through the storm, a plea for peace. And in that moment, everything hangs in the balance, a tapestry of lives intertwined, fates colliding. Anna's heart races, and Thabo's breath quickens, both caught in the web of war that binds them to a destiny they cannot escape. Shadows dance on the walls, and the cosmos watches, an indifferent spectator to the human struggle beneath its vast, unfeeling expanse. And just as the moment teeters on the brink, the world seems to hold its breath, caught in the chaos of human emotion, fear, hope, love, and loss, spiraling towards a climax that feels both inevitable and unimaginable. The sirens blared like banshees in the night, piercing the stillness of a city that had long forgotten what peace felt like. I stood in the shadows, heart pounding with the rhythm of dread, the echoes of chaos swirling around me. The ground trembled beneath my feet, a reminder that the earth had become unstable, that lives hung by a thread. I could feel the weight of their fear, their pain, and in that moment, it was as if the world held its breath, suspended in the tension of uncertainty. And then I saw her, a young girl, no older than 8, with dirt streaked across her cheeks and wide, terrified eyes that mirrored my own confusion. I crouched down, desperate to bridge the chasm of chaos. "What's your name?" I asked, my voice hoarse, almost swallowed by anguish. "Lena," she whispered, and in that single word, I felt the universe collapse and expand at once. Lena, a name that would echo in my soul long after this night ended. But it didn't end. Not yet. Not ever. Just a few blocks away, Ahmed was frantically searching for his brother, his heart a fragile thing, beating rapidly against the backdrop of crashing buildings and screams. The world around him blurred, shadows turning into specters of unspeakable sorrow. "Yosef," he called out, but each syllable felt like a prayer lost in the void, a prayer that might never reach its intended deity. I watched him, a tempest of desperation, his fists clenched tightly, knuckles white as the snow that melted in distant lands. "Where are you?" His voice cracked, raw with anguish, and I felt my own heart fracture alongside his. Everywhere, the cries of the displaced rang out like a haunting symphony, a chorus of despair that wove through the air, seeping into the cracks of our beings. The world stood as an indifferent audience, observing from afar, cloaked in the safety of their well-lit homes, sipping coffee while others rummaged through the debris of their dreams. I remembered the faces on the news, the headlines that blurred my own humanity. I remembered thinking it couldn't reach me, believing I was safe behind my screens, isolated from the worst of it. But here I was, standing on the precipice of horror. I turned my gaze back to Lena. Her tiny hands clutched a tattered doll, its button eyes dull and lifeless, much like hope in a shattered world. "Do you want to find your family?" I asked, and her nod was a flicker of light in the darkness, a surge of determination that ignited something deep within me. I couldn't let her face this alone, that was the burden of humanity, wasn't it? To bear each other's grief, to hold each other steady when the ground beneath us turned to quicksand. But what could I offer her? I had no magic, no divine intervention to wield. I was just a voice in the chaos, echoing the hopes of many who had been swept away by the tides of conflict. I felt the weight of the world press down on my shoulders, reminders of those who were not as fortunate, those who lay beneath the rubble, their stories silenced forever. Meanwhile, Ahmed had found a flicker of light amidst the shadows, an elderly woman, crumpled but resolute, her face a map of life's struggles. "Have you seen Youssef?" he implored, desperation spilling from his eyes. She shook her head, but her gaze held a glimmer of something, solidarity, perhaps, or the shared understanding of sacrifice. "We all search for someone," she murmured, and her voice was a balm, soothing the jagged edges of his fear. Outside, I could hear the distant rumble of vehicles, the urgent mobilization of aid that felt like a whisper against a storm. The world was responding, nations united in their grief, their anger. Yet, for every rallying cry, there was a shadow of indifference, a reminder that while we bled for each other, some chose to turn away. I felt the weight of that choice, heavy as lead, and it settled in my chest like a stone. I closed my eyes for a moment, breathing in the dust-laden air, a reminder that we all shared this fragile existence, a single thread connecting us across borders, races, and ideologies. I thought of the leaders convening in grand halls, the promises they made that sometimes felt like empty echoes in the face of suffering. I remembered the speeches, the hashtags, the fleeting moments of solidarity that often faded like smoke in the wind. "Do they see us?" I whispered into the night, unsure if anyone was listening. As Ahmed continued his search, I took Lena's hand, feeling the warmth of her small fingers intertwine with mine. We stepped forward together, navigating through the remnants of a life disrupted. The night grew darker, the shadows lengthened, but with each step, I felt a surge of resolve. We could not be silent witnesses, we had to write our own narrative amidst the chaos, a story stitched together through shared humanity. The world was watching, and while we may be but fleeting moments in the grand tapestry of existence, I believed we could still make the thread sing. I could feel it, the pulse of change thrumming just beneath the surface, ready to break free. In that moment, standing at the intersection of despair and hope, I became acutely aware of the weight of our interdependence, the shared burden of pain that could either crush us or propel us towards something greater. Ahmed's voice broke through the night once more, a haunting melody of desperation. "Youssef," he cried into the abyss, and we continued forward, hearts beating as one, ready to face whatever shadows lay ahead. Because in this conflict, amidst the rubble, we were alive, and perhaps that was the most potent rebellion of all. A bell tolls, its sound reverberating through the fog-drenched streets, slicing through the morning stillness like a knife. It's not just a bell, it's a harbinger, a knell echoing the urgency that grips the city like a vice. I stand in the shadow of an ancient stone wall, my heart racing, a drumbeat of dread. Around me, whispers coil like smoke, thick with fear and uncertainty. The faces of the people blur together, a tapestry woven with worry, mistrust, and the flickering shadows of what's to come. I remember Clara, her eyes wide and luminous, reflecting the chaos that envelops us. She clutches a tattered newspaper, the headlines screaming accusations, each word a blade aimed at our very souls. Propaganda, they call it, twisted realities parading as truth, seducing the masses into blind acceptance. I can feel her frustration radiating off her skin, a palpable heat as she desperately tries to parse through the lies. "You can't just believe everything they say," she pleads, her voice a choked whisper, as if speaking too loudly might summon the very demons we dread. Her hands tremble, the edges of the paper crumpling like her resolve. And there's Marcus, his brow furrowed, always questioning, always searching for the elusive truth buried beneath layers of deceit. He stands beside her, his own conviction bubbling beneath the surface, a restless tide threatening to break free. "They're puppeteers, Clara," he says, his voice low, yet charged with urgency. "And we're merely marionettes dancing to their tune." I can see the storm brewing in his chest, a tempest fueled by the manipulation he sees unfolding around us. He's terrified, but more than that, he's furious. It's a raw, primal fury that ignites the air, and it pulls me deeper into their plight. I remember the nights when we gathered in hushed tones, the flickering light of a single candle casting our shadows against the walls, an audience of ghosts. We debated, we raged, we dreamed of a world where truth wasn't a commodity to be bought and sold. The propaganda dripped like poison, seeping into our lives, twisting our perceptions until we were unsure of our own thoughts. It's like a dream we can't wake from, Clara says, a half-smile cracking through her fear. But what if we could fight it? What if we could wake up? But how do you fight an army of illusions? The question lingers in the air, heavy and suffocating. The words hang between us like a blade poised to slice through the fragile thread of hope. The shadows deepen, stretching across the cobblestones, whispering secrets we are too afraid to hear. I remember the day it all changed, the day the sirens wailed, slicing through the quiet and bringing chaos crashing like a tidal wave. People poured into the streets, eyes wild with fear, their faces mirrors reflecting a collective hysteria. "They're coming for us," a voice shrieked, and I felt it, the way the air turned electric, as if we were standing on the precipice of something terrible. Clara's grip tightened on my arm, I could feel her heart racing in sync with mine. "We have to do something," she shouted, but what could we do? We were but grains of sand in a storm, helpless against the fury of the winds. As we huddled together, the three of us became a small island amidst the cacophony. The sounds of chaos blurred into an orchestra of despair, the cries of the wounded, the desperate pleas for answers, a symphony of anguish that pierced through my heart. I could taste the bile rising in my throat, the bitter tang of helplessness swirling within me. My thoughts spiraled, were we mere pawns caught in a game we couldn't even see? Clara's eyes darted to the horizon, where the first hints of dawn began to pierce the darkness. "Look," she shouted, her voice a beacon in the murky depths. "The truth will come to light." But the rising sun only illuminated the cruel reality, the way it cast long shadows that danced mockingly across our faces. I wanted to believe her, but the weight of uncertainty pressed down, forcing the breath from my lungs. Marcus, ever the skeptic, shook his head. "Light can be blinding," he warned, a dark shadow crossing his features. "Sometimes it reveals more than we're ready to face." His words hung in the air, a warning that sent a chill racing down my spine. What truths were we unprepared to confront? I could feel the darkness closing in, a shroud wrapped tightly around our hearts. As the sun climbed higher, the landscape shifted, morphing into a battleground, a metaphorical war of minds and hearts. The propaganda machines churned relentlessly, spewing half-truths and slogans that danced like fireflies in the night, intoxicating and dangerous. Everywhere I turned, people were consumed by their narratives, unable to see the strings that manipulated them. I watched as Clara's face contorted with anguish, a silent scream caught in her throat. "This isn't just about us," she murmured, her voice trembling. "It's about everyone, everyone who believes in a lie." Time slipped through our fingers like sand, each grain a decision, a choice that led us deeper into the abyss. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a tapestry of crimson and violet, we stood there, three souls tethered by fear and hope, both yearning for a spark of truth amidst the darkness. The clock ticked ominously in the background, a reminder that change was coming, whether we were ready or not. I remember the moment crystallizing in my mind, how everything felt suspended in time, an exquisite agony that held us captive. It was just the three of us against the world, an unbreakable bond forged in the fires of uncertainty. We were soldiers in a war of words, our hearts pounding as we prepared to confront the ghosts of propaganda, the shadows that threatened to consume us whole. As the first whispers of revolution rippled through the air, I realized we were no longer mere spectators. We were the authors of our own story, ready to shatter the silence and breathe fire into the hearts of the lost. And so we stood, on the precipice of something monumental, teetering on the edge of possibility, knowing that the true battle for our souls was just beginning. The air buzzed with anticipation, each heartbeat echoing our determination, each breath a vow that this was only the beginning of a fight that would shape not just our destiny, but the very fabric of reality itself. In that moment, I knew fear would not bind us, it would fuel us. And as the darkness loomed, we prepared to fight, together. The air was thick with tension, a smothering blanket of dread that clung to the skin like sweat. I remember the sound of distant gunfire, a staccato rhythm that spoke of desperation, of lives hanging by a fraying thread. Beneath the rusted beams of an abandoned warehouse, shadows danced with the flickering light of a single oil lamp, its flame shivering in the drafts of uncertainty. In that dim light, 3 figures loomed, their faces etched with fear and resolve, each harboring secrets that felt like ticking time bombs threatening to explode. Elena stood to the left, her dark hair tangled like the chaos in her heart. She had come to this moment with scars that ran deeper than skin, emotional scars from a father lost to violence, a brother taken in the night. She was a fierce soul, torn between vengeance and a desire for peace, the weight of her choices heavy like the weapon slung across her shoulder. The way her fingers brushed the trigger was a haunting dance of a woman caught between 2 worlds, one of bloodshed and another that beckoned with the promise of healing. Then there was Malik, a reluctant warrior whose heart beat in sync with the pain of countless fallen comrades. He was tall, almost spindly, with eyes that mirrored the storm raging inside him. The ghosts of his past flickered behind his gaze, a childhood spent in the ruins of his homeland, dreams stained by the blood of friends turned enemies. Stepping into this arena of fading hope, he wrestled with the weight of his choices, the haunting question reverberating in his mind, could he really turn his back on everything he had fought for? His hand trembled at his side, a nervous energy that crackled like static in the air. And then there was the third figure, Amir, a negotiator with a heart as fractured as a city shattered by war. Each word he spoke felt like a fragile bridge built over a canyon of despair. Sweat dripped from his brow, glistening like the last remnants of innocence in a world gone mad. He was the one who believed in whispers of peace, who dared to dream of tomorrow while standing amidst the ruins of today. The tension twisted in his gut as he prepared to lay bare the desires of his people, but what if those desires were nothing more than a mirage long hidden by the desolation that stretched before them? "Tonight, we decide," he said, but even his voice trembled, betraying the cracks beneath his bravado. The shadows seemed to lean in, eager, hungry for the outcome, as if the very walls could absorb their despair. I remember the moment their eyes locked, Elena's fierce determination blazing against Malik's quiet turmoil. It was a clash of worlds, the fiery passion of revenge thrust against the icy grip of reason. Every heartbeat echoed with the weight of unspoken words, of choices yet to be made. Would they stand together, or would the tide of anger tear them apart? The air grew heavier with the scent of gunpowder and unfulfilled dreams. Elena broke the silence, her voice a low growl. "Every day spent negotiating is another day my brother is in the ground, another day I can't bring him back." The hurt in her voice was palpable, a raw wound that refused to heal. Malik turned, his own anger boiling beneath the surface. "And what would you have us do? Charge into the night, guns blazing? You think that will bring him back? You think vengeance will fill the void?" The clash of their voices filled the room, reverberating against the cold concrete like a funeral dirge, haunting and beautiful. Elena clenched her fists, eyes blazing. "You speak of peace, but what do you know of loss? What do you know of fighting for something that was ripped away from you?" Her words sliced through the darkness, leaving behind a lingering ache, a truth that stung like betrayal. Time felt suspended, as if the universe itself held its breath while they stood on the precipice of choice. In that moment, Amir stepped forward, a soft voice cutting through the anger. "I know both sides of this war. I know the pain of loss, but I also know the cost of continuing this cycle. We can be more than ghosts haunting this battlefield." His words hung in the air, a glimmer of hope in a world overshadowed by darkness. Yet, Elena's gaze hardened like stone, her resolve unyielding. "You want me to forget? To forgive? How can I embrace peace when my heart is a battlefield?" As she spoke, the shadows seemed to writhe, reflecting her struggle, swallowing the light like regrets long buried. I felt the icy grip of fear clench at my heart. What would become of them? Would they emerge from this place scarred but united, or would they be torn apart, lost to the very anger they sought to transcend? Malik closed his eyes, the weight of his decision pressing down like a mountain, 1,000 voices rising in the rubble of his mind. "Elena, we're not fighting for ourselves anymore. We're fighting for our people. For those who have nothing left." His voice trembled, a threadbare plea against her wrath. "Don't let your brother's memory become a weapon. Let it be a light." The air crackled with the electricity of 1,000 unspooled emotions. I remembered a time when the stars felt close enough to touch, when dreams felt tangible, innocence splintered by reality. The clock ticked on, each second stretching into an eternity, as the three of them stood anchored in their conflicting truths. And in that warehouse, under the flickering light, the fragile promise of hope twinkled dimly amidst the chaos. They stood on the brink of a decision that could change everything, their fates entwined in an intricate dance of fear, anger, and desire. With every passing moment, the shadows closed in, the whispers of the past echoing louder, drowning out reason. It was a haunting melody, a call to arms and hearts alike, as their lives hung in the balance, suspended in time, waiting for the next heartbeat to determine their fate. The night was thick with a silence that swallowed sound, a darkness so deep it felt tangible, like a shroud of heavy fabric pressing against the skin. The air crackled with electricity, as if the universe itself held its breath, waiting for the storm to break. In this silence, a figure stood alone on the worn path, the dirt of past battles swirling around his boots, whispering the names of the fallen, friends, brothers, all lost to the echoes of history. I remember the way the memories huddled in the corners of his mind, shadows flickering like candle flames, dancing in and out of focus. Jacob, a once spirited fighter, now a ghost of the man he used to be, clutched his rifle tightly, the metal cool against his palm, a comfort and a curse. In the distance, the remnants of a battlefield loomed, twisted and scarred, and with every heartbeat, he felt the weight of those who had fought beside him. Memories crashed over him like waves, pulling him under, drowning him in a tide of guilt and sorrow. Why them? Why not me? The question slashed through the silence, raw and bleeding, leaving him gasping for breath. He was the last of his unit, and the silence of the night roared with the absence of their laughter, their camaraderie. It mocked him now. The ghosts taunted him, flickering in the edges of his vision, their faces forever etched in his heart. And then there was Eliza, her spirit fierce and unyielding, a flame in the darkness. She had fought not with a rifle, but with words, her voice a weapon sharper than any blade. Her brother had fallen, and that loss twisted her resolve into something more potent, more dangerous. I will not forget, she whispered to herself, surrounded by the echoes of history, every word punctuated by a pulse of vengeance. She poured her heart into her work, crafting memorials that stood tall like sentinels, reminding the world of the sacrifices made. Each stone she carved bled emotion, alive with the stories of lives entwined and cut short. I remember, her voice lingered in the air, as if reaching out to the past, cradling it in her hands. I remember the way he laughed, the sound of his boots on the ground, the warmth of his hand. The memories were her armor, but they were also her chains, binding her to a past that refused to fade away. Together, they navigated the remnants of a world shattered by conflict, the ghosts of the Boer fighters trailing behind them, unseen yet omnipresent. The shadows of the past wrapped around them like an embrace, intimate and suffocating. They were both trapped in the same tempest, two souls adrift in a sea of sorrow, yet unable to break free. As dusk fell, the air grew heavier, thick with anticipation, the silence almost unbearable. Jacob and Eliza met at the memorial, where the names of the dead were etched in stone, a testament to their bravery and sacrifice. The stones gleamed under the moonlight, a chill in the air tangling with the warmth of their memories. They stood shoulder to shoulder, the weight of their shared grief binding them in a way words never could. "I'm afraid, Eliza," Jacob's voice broke, fragile as glass. "Afraid that one day, they'll be forgotten. That we'll forget." He wanted to scream, to shake the world awake, to make them remember the faces that had been lost to the unforgiving tide of time. Forget? Eliza's eyes flared with a fire that ignited something deep within him, a flicker of hope. How can we forget? How can anyone? Each name on the wall was a heartbeat, a story, a soul that had tasted the bitterness of war. Her fingers traced the letters, each groove a reminder, each name a battle cry against oblivion. "I remember," she began again, and Jacob felt the words wrap around him, a lifeline tethering him to the present. "I remember their laughter, the way they fought for each other, for us. They deserve to be remembered, Jacob. They deserve to be honored." The fierce power in her voice surged, filling the void where despair had nestled, pushing back against the shadows. The wind picked up, howling through the memorial like the anguished cries of the fallen, a haunting symphony that tugged at their hearts. Around them, the world was a cacophony of memories, vibrant and alive, yet steeped in grief. The moon hung low in the sky, a silent witness to their struggle, casting ghostly shadows that twisted and turned, echoing their turmoil. Time slipped by, each tick of the clock a reminder of the fleeting nature of existence. The memories clawed at Jacob and Eliza, a duality of beauty and pain. They were entwined in the battle of remembering versus forgetting, each heartbeat a pulse in the endless struggle against the void. "I can't let them fade away," Jacob pleaded, his voice cracking like lightning in the darkness. "What if we forget their stories? What if they become just names on a stone?" Eliza turned to him, her eyes fierce, unyielding. "We won't forget. We can't. This is our legacy, Jacob. It's our duty to carry their stories, to hold them close." Together, they stood, united by the haunting weight of memory, their hearts beating in rhythm with the echoes of the past. Around them, the night swirled, shadows danced, and the cosmos whispered its secrets. The legacy of the Boer fighters was not just etched in stone, it pulsed in their veins, a living testament to sacrifice and survival. And as they faced the darkness, hearts pounding with the intensity of their resolve, a flicker of dawn broke on the horizon, promising a new day, a day when their memories would shine, illuminating the path forward, fighting against the shadows that threatened to consume them. The battle for memory was far from over. It had only just begun. The air crackles with tension, a silence so thick it feels like a shroud, wrapping itself around the worn streets of Johannesburg as the sun dips below the jagged skyline. A child's laughter echoes, a bright note in an unsettling symphony, and then, a distant boom, like a heartbeat skipping. The ground trembles underfoot, and it's not just the remnants of a bygone war that shake the earth. I stand at the corner of a crumbling building, my heart drumming with memories. Memories of a past that refuses to fade, even as the present clamors for attention. I remember the stories of my grandfather, the tales of trench warfare and blood-soaked earth. I remember his haunted eyes, the way they flickered when he spoke of the Boer War, a marrow-deep conflict that still casts its long shadow over us. Across the street, Thandi stands, her face a canvas of determination, streaked with the grime of the day's toil. She wears a faded red scarf, a small act of rebellion against the bleakness surrounding us. She stares at the statue, a towering figure of a soldier, bronze and cold, etched with the names of those who fought and fell. But it's not the soldiers she remembers, it's her father, the one who fought for a cause that seems both noble and absurd. "I can't forget his stories," she murmurs, almost to herself. The fear, the hope, the betrayal. Each word is a stone, heavy and sharp, striking the air with an intensity that makes the world around us shudder. Her voice carries the echoes of pain, a haunting reminder that history is not just a series of events, but a living entity that still breathes in the cracks of our society. In the shadows of the statue, Nathan watches, his eyes dark pools of unresolved conflict. He's heard Thandi speak before, her fervor igniting something within him, a flame he tries to snuff out. Yet the truth grips him like a vice. He can't escape the reality of his family's legacy. Grandfather's tales haunt him too, tales of a brave man who went to war for honor, only to return a ghost of himself, a shell haunted by what he had done. "I remember," Nathan says, almost mechanically, "the smell of smoke, the sounds of men shouting, dying." His voice quakes, and for a moment, the air is thick with the weight of unspoken words. He clutches a small scrap of paper in his hand, a letter he found hidden in an old trunk, yellowed and fragile. The words scrawled inside are an admission of horror, a confession of the choices that forever altered the course of his family. He didn't just fight for freedom, he fought for power. And power, it devours. The moment hangs, suspended, like a pendulum ticking towards an inevitable confrontation. Each tick echoes the heartbeat of a nation still wrestling with its history. Thandi's eyes flash with anger, an unquenchable fire igniting within her. "Power devours, but we have to reclaim it," she insists, her voice rising above the quiet despair surrounding us. "We can't let their ghosts dictate our future. It's time to unearth the truth, to confront what happened." Nathan shakes his head, the pain etched into his features almost unbearable. "But what if the truth shatters everything? What if it's too much to bear? History isn't just etched in stone, it seeps into our very bones. He wants to scream, to tear apart the foundations of his family's narrative, but fear holds him back. Suddenly, the ground beneath us thrums again, a reminder that this is no ordinary moment. The city pulses with life, with shadows of the past clawing at the edges of present reality. And as the sun finally sinks, the darkness envelops us, a cloak of uncertainty and dread. We have to stand together, Thandi insists, stepping closer, her breath mingling with the cool night air. We owe it to them, to the ones who fought, who died, who lived with regrets. It's not just our history, it's their legacy. Her voice trembles, a plea wrapped in passion. But Nathan feels the weight of his grandfather's sins crushing him, a relentless tide against the shore. What if their legacy is one of violence and division? What if confronting it tears us apart? His voice drops to a whisper, as if the ghosts are listening. Then we face it, Nathan. Together, she urges, her eyes fierce and unwavering, unyielding in the face of his fears. We're the ones who can rewrite the story. We're the ones who can bring the shadows into the light. And in that moment, under the watchful eyes of the soldier's statue, the air thick with unresolved tension, something shifts. The weight of history presses down, yet the flicker of hope ignites like a match struck in the dark. I remember the stars twinkling above, vast and indifferent, as if they were witnesses to our struggle. I remember the city alive with voices, echoing the sentiments of those who came before us. In the distance, the wail of sirens pierces through the night, an urgent reminder that the past and present collide in a cacophony of needs and desires. The clock ticks ominously, each second echoing the heartbeat of a nation still trying to understand itself. Shadows dance around us, whispers of the past, fears of the future. I can feel it now, the weight of memories pressing hard against my chest, a relentless reminder that we must confront our demons, lest they consume us whole. And as the night deepens, enveloping us in its arms, Nathan and Thandi stand resolute, their fates intertwined with the ghosts of history. The confrontation looms, an emotional eruption waiting to break free, a raw and unfiltered reckoning that promises to shake the very foundations of who we are. Each heartbeat, each breath, pulls us closer to the edge of something monumental, an awakening that must happen, a truth that demands to be heard, even if it cuts deep. In the silence that follows, the echoes of the past whisper, tantalizingly close, as we step forward into the unknown. A single drop of rain fell, splattering against the cracked pavement, a lonely tear in a war-torn city that had long forgotten the taste of joy. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and despair, wrapping itself around the survivors like a suffocating shroud. I stood there, heart racing, breath caught in my throat, as the echoes of gunfire ripped through the stillness. It was a sound that clawed at the edges of sanity, reminding me of everything I had lost, everything I had to fight for. Around me, shadows moved with purpose. There was Lena, her fierce spirit flickering like a dying flame, eyes a storm of defiance. She had seen too much, yet every crack in her heart was filled with the resolve to keep pushing forward. I could almost hear her thoughts, a cacophony of fears and hopes. Not today, she whispered to herself, gripping her rifle as if it were a lifeline. I admired her strength, but I could see the ghosts of her past trailing closely behind, a lover lost, a brother gone too soon. Each battle only deepened the scars etched into her soul. Beside her was Malik, caught in a web of conflicting loyalties, his heart a battlefield of its own. I watched him wrestle with his choices, the weight of their implications pressing down like a war drum in his chest. He had once been a soldier on the other side, but now he fought for a cause that felt like home, though it ripped him apart. Each time he raised his weapon, a part of him crumbled. Each time he pulled the trigger, he felt the screams of those he had betrayed. The madness of war twisted his reality, and I saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. The world around us pulsated with tension. Buildings towered like silent sentinels, their broken windows reflecting the chaos outside. This city, once vibrant and full of life, now lay in ruins, a graveyard of dreams and ambitions. I felt the weight of history pressing down, a reminder that those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. Lena moved ahead, eyes scanning for threats, her breath sharp and quick. I followed, each step a reminder of the danger lurking just beyond our fragile reality. Trust in the shadows, she had said once, a lesson from the guerrilla tactics that had become our lifeline. Those words echoed in my mind, a mantra that both terrified and comforted me. Shadows were fickle, they could conceal or betray. But here, among the wreckage, they were our allies, our escape. Suddenly, a shot rang out, shattering the tense silence. My heart jumped into my throat. Malik had been hit, crumpling to the ground like a ragdoll tossed aside. Time slowed, each second stretching into eternity as I rushed to his side. Blood seeped into the earth, a stark contrast against the grey. His breath came in ragged gasps, eyes wide with pain yet somehow still full of life. "I can't go back," he choked out, voice trembling with the weight of his truth. "Not now. Not after everything." I could feel the pressure of his words wrapping around my chest, squeezing tighter with each pulse of his fading heartbeat. It was a confession, a surrender. He was caught in a war not just against enemies, but against himself, and with each labored breath, I knew he was fighting for redemption. "Stay with me, Malik!" I shouted, my voice cracking under the strain of desperation. "You have to hold on." But the shadows whispered their dark promises, drawing him closer to the edge, and I was powerless to stop the inevitable. Lena's hands were trembling as she applied pressure to the wound, her fierce determination battling against the cruel reality of their fate. "We'll get you out," she insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. Her eyes betrayed her, flickering with fear. The uncertainty was a poison, infecting the air around us. I could feel the weight of the world crashing down, suffocating me as I wrestled with my own demons. Memories flooded in of laughter, of love, of life before all this chaos. I remembered the warmth of a sun that felt like a lifetime away, the carefree moments that now felt like distant dreams. But those memories were ghosts, taunting me with their fleeting nature, reminding me that nothing is ever certain, least of all survival. "Keep fighting, brother," Malik urged, desperation gripping him like a vice. "Fight for them, for us." His words were a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge of despair. I could see the flicker of hope amid the darkness, a reminder that even in the abyss, light could break through. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. I grabbed Malik's hand, squeezing it tightly, feeling the warmth seep away. "We will find a way," I promised, the conviction in my voice rising like a phoenix from the ashes. "You are not alone." Lena was already scanning the horizon, her gaze sharp and focused. "We move now," she commanded, her voice cutting through the haze. There was no time to waste, the shadows were shifting, danger closing in. As we began to retreat, every heartbeat echoed with fear and determination. The specters of war loomed large, but in the depths of that chaos stood three souls bound by a single thread, an unbreakable will to survive, to fight, to remember. In that city of ghosts, we were the living, and though the shadows threatened to consume us, we would carve our own path. What we faced was not merely a battle against an enemy, but a struggle against the darkness within. For in the end, even the fiercest guerrilla knows that the greatest fight is not just for territory, but for the very essence of humanity itself. And as we slipped into the shadows, every breath a silent prayer, I realized this was not just a fight for our lives, but a fight for the flickering flame of hope that refused to be extinguished. Time moved on, relentless and unwavering, and we would forge ahead, into the unknown, into the heart of the storm, where the lessons of the guerrilla awaited us, waiting to be learned, waiting to live.